Someone across my chat said, haha, if only. And to me, it felt like all of creation clamped down and cast a cage on existence. In a way, it might have been the first time that I had tasted that disgust of defeatism in my present, but it wasn't because of the circumstances, really. I suppose today that phrase could have come out of anybody's mouth about anything, and it would have felt like Voldemort had walked into reality regardless. And that's because for the past 3 months, I've been channeling a way of walking in the world that could not be any more different than the phrase, if only, emitting from a soul obviously trapped in the land of assumed absolutes. Now, how can I have the gall to claim that they're living there? Because if only, in and of itself, is the calling card of a citizen of the land of assumed absolutes. Because in only 2 words, all assumptions and all absolutes of limitations are stated so plainly. If is the great assumer. And oh, how glorious it is when it knows itself in truth. In truth, if is the great primer for when, but people in the land of assumed absolutes rarely allow themselves to get anywhere close to the contemplation of when. Why? Because that would mean that they need to leave the land of absolutes. In the land of absolutes, when is just kind of not allowed because it comes with uncertainty and certainty kind of swirled together. Certainty that desire is a magnificent thing. Uncertainty of seeing how it will come into form. For those who live in the land of assumed absolutes, uncertainty is nowhere to be seen. But false certainty, false certainty is calling all the shots. It pops the only into the folds as only itself is an extrapolation of one, meaning singular. There's no alternative. And there can be no better representative of absolutism than a singular outcome. So, what's actually occurring in the mind of an if only person? While this might sound extreme to the untrained ear, if only is the separator of heaven and hell. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You might be thinking that's quite the claim. And yes, in and of itself, it can sound absolutist. And I suppose because it is. There's no way to walk into a future of opportunity when you are withholding even the contemplation of the possibility of something. Sit in the power of that statement, really. It's not insane how much will never come to pass because the simple contemplation of it is so imbued with defeatism that contemplation goes no further. Even worse is that the construct of the mind, and the only reason the mind has that habit in the first place, is to create an illusion of certainty in a certainly uncertain future. I, by contrast, love the delight of an uncertain future. Without uncertainty, we would be puppets mechanically moved into a scripted state of predictability. How boring. I know that would not portray a heaven on earth as scripted, that's for sure. I would definitely not. So it's always baffled me how many preserve the addiction to creating false certainty as opposed to dance the sweet dance of the magic of the uncertain, prompting the future. There, into that uncertain future, we get to project all of our sweetheart's visions, our musings, and a gentle call into the void with a sweet giggle of never knowing how it will come back. People in the realm of manifestation might be coiling at the thought of this because it starts to break down the false power of manifestation. Manifestation, as most people know it, is a play with certainty, I suppose. A proclamation that will come to pass, and in some respects, that could hold true. But more importantly, it was never the certainty of the stuff that's going to be happening. It's the certainty of the self that is doing the heavy lifting in manifestation. The certainty of self and who we know ourselves to be that allows us to meet the future as we are and relate accordingly to what will come to pass. But by no means is a certainty of what will come to pass, just how we're going to relate to it and nothing more. When we're talking our perceptions of ourselves forward into the future with if onlys in our pocket, we're still exhibiting the fear of the costume of our desires. Like we're throwing a big cushion on our path to trip ourselves so we have somewhere safe, somewhere soft to land. But if we saw ourselves as strong footed towards that desire, no such cushion would be needed. If only is the desire loaded with impossibility before it even ever gets to breathe. Compensatory wanting that was never really about the thing, but about confirming the inadequacy underneath it. Only seals it shut by installing a false certainty of a singular outcome of impossibility and trading the productive uncertainty of genuine desire for the dead comfort of knowing it won't happen. False comfort in one respect because no such comfort was needed. But yeah, guess comfort because all the possibility has been erased from potential. So no pursuit will be set into motion. And so, yeah, I guess the comfort of nothing happening is happening. If only also sounds like a longing. It sounds wistful, even beautiful, but it's fear's most polished product. Fear is always stealing the truth that the thing is possible and that the person is capable, and it replaces it with the appearance of desire that has already been accepted in defeat. Every if only is that theft happening in real time and in plain sight. And the speaker doesn't even know that they've been robbed. But what a manipulative relationship with ourselves that is. To live life in this way, creating desires and telling ourselves they'll never happen so we can literally make nothing happen. To me, this is hell. It took me a long time to notice how many people were living in hell. Honestly, it took years of me trying to reach across the internet, the community, and all the like to remind people that they're in heaven where their thoughts create reality and all they have to do is try to get a steady pummeling of if only enough to have caught me on to choose to subscribe to that hell right there with them for a time. I mean, it felt like it must have been about something. There must have been something of value about subscribing to the land of limitation. So I did for a time. And oh man, in true form to my nature, I stacked up the limitations hard. I guess I'm not for doing something small. And so I worked hard. I looked at the world hard. I fought for all of my wins and I earned for every little delight that I brought myself. In retrospect, it's hilarious to think that looking for so little in return could ever be portrayed with so much efforting. And maybe that's what people understand as being powerful, putting the perception of everything against you so you can sense the tactility of your own force. Life is effortless. Really. In and of itself, it takes zero effort. This truth I will carry to my grave because when you lean into the present moment and you watch your hands in real time, it can only do one task. That's it. All of life is one task over and over billions of times per second. But oh, how the creative mind is to take that one task and make it look difficult, complicated, even miserable. The only experience that feels challenging at this part of my journey is expanding the state of dreaming beyond belief. It takes an enormous amount of personal accountability and also a heavy relationship with the unknown. At this time, the unknown is my great lover. The unknown looks at me on the daily and asks me to dream bigger. The unknown peers deep into my eyes and tells me how beautiful I am and the times I see myself as incapable of anything. The unknown coaxes the hairs on my neck to stand to allegiance to the mystery of myself, the great wonder that I'm calling into the future, reminding me of how good it's going to get. The unknown likes to giggle at my guesses, winks at me to see how ridiculous I'm being when I try and paint rigid pictures for anything future out there in the next few seconds. Right. Writes articles about my creative musings, and when I try and tell stories about anyone or anything that has yet to come to pass, and I blush because this lover is always right, catching me off guard with truths about me that I had long forgotten in the challenging moments of my life. This great lover reminds me of the artist that I am when I get vulnerable to my life and how my greatest moments of intimacy with my existence, I feel the God within myself unmistakably and witness the miraculous and how casual it is. The miraculous is default mode, and those who seek the miraculous take it so seriously, and those who don't have defeatism running in their bloodstream that the best miracles tend to fall pretty flat. This kind of experience of life, as I've been describing here, where if onlys are thrown around carelessly, is hell. I can tell you that. So, what is heaven then? Because if it's an if only, that's the separator. If that's what casts you into the hell of our own making, then what gains access to the living heaven? And I think the reason people struggle with this is because the version of heaven that they've been sold has nothing to do with what heaven actually is. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt Heaven is available here in every moment, and you've never left it. So let me paint it and paint it plainly so that the if onlys don't get triggered and you can see it even if it's just for a moment. Heaven is a playground, a place where everything is available to you, where splendor is on tap, not rare. It's the default. Where discovery is around every corner, if you are even slightly willing to be curious about it, where pleasure is woven into the ordinary so deeply you could spend your entire life celebrating and never run out of material, where every opportunity is genuinely afforded to you. And the only distinction between someone who's participating in the paradise and someone who's not is whether they looked at it and said, yeah, that's for me. Or, no, that's not for me. Now, this part, the radical responsibility of the free will of identifying with what is happening as heaven or hell, is the sticky part for many. But in actuality, that's it. That's the whole criteria. There is so much miraculous majesty available in every moment. One can perceive the miraculous at any time. The if only places heaven permanently in a conditional state, accessible only if reality had been different. This is the verbal signature of someone locked out of the present moment. You cannot experience the heaven of your life happening now when you've already declared it inaccessible. The person hasn't been denied heaven, they've just disqualified themselves from allowing it in advance. And how, if only, is the fastest way a person can say that it's not for me without ever having to take the responsibility for the fact that they chose it. Now, because I'm one for demonstrations, here's an example, and I will provide two for some context. First, we're going to start with the mundane. As I was writing this piece, I was there in a coffee shop, and many might wonder what's so miraculous and heavenly about it. And I get it. On the surface, it's a person sitting in a chair with a drink, mundane, ordinary, nothing to write home about. Certainly doesn't look like heaven. But how asleep you would have to be to actually believe that. Right now, I'm writing words that the entire world can read. Let that land for a second. Sitting in a chair in the United States, and within moments of me pressing a button, a human being in Tokyo or Cape Town or a village whose name I can't even pronounce literally can read my thoughts. The miracle of that is so enormous that if you told someone 200 years ago that this was possible, they would have either had you worshipped or had you burned alive. And honestly, probably both. Because it's Tuesday and I have Wi Fi, I don't even think about it. Cups in my hand, a little vessel that I'm holding so casually, choosing to realize that there's dinosaur bones that made this. And I'm not even being poetic. Literal ancient creatures lived and died, compressed into the earth for millions of years so that their remains could become a petroleum that became a plastic, that became a cup, that's keeping my sacred brain focusing elixir from Colombia hot enough for me to enjoy. Colombia, even. Somebody on the other side of the continent grew this, picked it, roasted it, shipped it across oceans, and received it on demand for the cost of what most people lose in their couch cushions. Of course, it's also delicious. It's making my brain work in ways that are letting me write things that might change how someone sees their entire life today. Music playing in my headphones is being performed by humans who poured their souls into sound, and it's just here, floating in the background like beauty, just wallpaper on the wall. And none of this registers as miraculous to most people because it's happening every single day. But that's the trick, is it not? The miraculous does not stop being miraculous just because it's consistent. We just stop noticing. And the moment you stop noticing that the miracles that are literally composing every second of your ordinary life, you start looking for heaven somewhere else. And you start saying, if only. For those who have a taste for upholding their hell with a little bit of defeatist thinking, don't worry. I got you. And if you think I'm being cute about coffee shops and dinosaur bones, let me take you somewhere that's going to make this impossible to dismiss. A man named Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who was put into Auschwitz, not a metaphorical hell, like an actual hell, one that humanity constructed with its own hands to be as close to the absence of heaven as we've ever gotten. There's others, but in that time, he lost his wife, he lost his family, he lost the manuscript he'd been working on. They erased his identity, took away his name, and gave him a number. He was starved and beaten and surrounded by death on a scale that most of us cannot even allow ourselves to imagine. And this man, inside of that, found heaven available. Not after, not in retrospect, from the comfort of the book deal decades later, inside of it. Inside of it. He wrote that even in the camps, there were people who walked through the barracks comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. That there's moments watching the sunset through the barbed wire where beauty still pierced through. That suffering ceased to be suffering the moment that it found meaning. Now, I need you to really hear what I'm saying here because it's not an inspirational quote for your Pinterest board. This is a man who lived inside one of the worst experiences that humanity has ever done to each other, telling us the experience of heaven was not removed from him by circumstance, that it was accessible, and that it lived in how he related to what was happening and not in what was happening. And he's not alone in this. History is full of people who found the miraculous inside of the supposedly unlivable. It's not rare. It's recorded over and over and over again, which means it's not some superhuman ability that a few exceptional souls possess. It is a curious capacity, one that lives in every single person, one that most people never access because they've been too busy saying only about circumstances that don't even come close to a fraction of what Frankel endured. So, if heaven was available inside of Auschwitz, what's your excuse? And I'm saying this with love, but I'm also saying it with force that it deserves because the question should rearrange something inside of you. Now, here is where I lose people. And honestly, I'm fine with that. Because this level of becoming aware of our true power in reality can scramble any of us, because it also proceeds to include the truth that this heaven also includes difficulty. And the moment that I say that, the conditioned mind goes, no, if it was heaven, it would be sold as frictionless. It's a place where everything is easy and nothing hurts. The reward for being spiritual enough or successful enough or healed enough is the removal of challenge from your experience forever. That is not heaven. That's a padded cell. It's a land of assumed absolutes wearing a golden robe. And honestly, it's the most sophisticated version of hell there is because you don't even know that you're in it. Why? Because challenge and difficulty is what makes heaven alive. It's what prompts evolution. It's what makes everything different than predictable. It's the reason anything deepens. It's the reason that anything means anything at all. Without difficulty, this paradise is scripted. And we already know what scripted looks like. We just spent this entire article talking about it. The singular outcome, the false certainty, the only. A heaven without difficulty is a heaven without growth, and a heaven without growth is a prison. It just happens to look pretty. So if difficulty is not what disqualifies you from paradise, then what does? Nothing. Sit in that for a second. Nothing disqualifies you. You are already here. You've been here the whole time. And the only reason it doesn't feel like heaven is because you have a broken relationship with difficulty. You see friction and you conclude something's gone wrong. You feel the heat of expansion and you interpret it as evidence that you're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, and living the wrong life. And from that interpretation comes the avalanche. If only I had started earlier. If only I had more money. If only I were different. If only, if only, if only. Difficulty met with presence is not suffering. It's intimacy with your existence. It's the feeling of your own edges stretching into something that have not been yet, which is honestly the entire point of being here in the first place. That is what existential intimacy is. Not some framework for making life comfortable. It's a relationship, a real one, with your existence as it actually is. Difficulty and splendor and the uncertainty of it all. It involves a radical responsibility. It involves a deep and almost unreasonable awareness of yourself and how you're showing up to this life that you've been given. But don't make it more complicated than it is, because it's actually child's play. Think about it. Children don't say, if only. They say, what if? They say, when can I? They say, watch this. They throw themselves into the unknown with a giggle, and they do not need to know what comes back because the throwing was the whole point. That's the natural state. Everything else was learned. And I don't know about you, but I find enormous comfort in the fact that everything learned can be unlearned. The question was never whether you live in heaven. The question was never whether you live in heaven. The question is whether you are willing to have a relationship with it that includes all of it, the splendor and the difficulty and the certainty of who you are and the gorgeous uncertainty of what comes next. The magnificent absurdity of being alive, not knowing what happens in the next second and choosing to call that beautiful instead of terrifying. And oh, how casual the miraculous becomes when you do.